Hello students, in this session we are starting the unit 5. Unit 5 contains Hyperledger Fabric. So we have to study Hyperledger Fabric, its architecture and consensus mechanism in Hyperledger Fabric. So we will start with the syllabus of unit 5. So you can see the syllabus of Unit 5. Unit 5 contains Hyperledger Fabric, architecture, identities and policies. Then membership and access control mechanism in Hyperledger Fabric. How the transactions are validated. Writing smart contracts using Hyperledger Fabric. Writing smart contract using Ethereum. And at the end of the unit, we have to take the overview of Ripple and Corda. So Hyperledger Fabric, Hyperledger is not a blockchain, but it is a project that was initiated by the Linux Foundation in December 2015 to advance the blockchain technology. So this project is a collaborative effort by its members to build an open source distributed ledger framework that can be used to develop and implement cross-industry blockchain applications and systems. The principal focus is to develop and run platforms that support global business transaction. The project also focuses on improving the reliability and performance of blockchain system. So if you see this Hyperledger Fabric, this fabric was initiated by Linux in December 2015 to advance the blockchain technology. This project is a collaborative effort by its members to build an open source distributed ledger framework. So you try to understand this. This is the collaborative effort to build an open source distributed ledger framework. So the aim is to build the distributed ledger framework, and this framework can be used to develop and implement cross-industry blockchain applications. So we can read it is used to develop and implement cross-industry blockchain applications and system. So this is the effort by its members to build an open source distributed ledger framework, and this framework can be used to develop and to implement cross-industry blockchain applications and system. The principal focus is to develop and run platforms that support global business transaction. So the main aim of this Hyperledger is that to develop and run platforms that support the global business transaction, and this project also focuses on improving the reliability and performance of blockchain system. So if you see this Hyperledger is a private and permissioned blockchain. Its architecture is modular. It provides a modular architecture. It has divided the blockchain operations in various modules, and we can select the modules as per our requirement. We can select the industry. Industries can develop their blockchain network by using the Hyperledger Fabric, and industries can choose the modules as per their requirement. The security mechanism can be selected as per their requirement. Then they can decide whether they really need the consensus mechanism or not. So this is the benefit of this Hyperledger Fabric, which provides plug and play features. So in this session we will study the architecture of this Hyperledger Fabric, and when we study the Hyperledger Fabric design goals, at that time you will become clear what is the goal of this Hyperledger Fabric, and how this Hyperledger Fabric can benefit to the industries to develop their blockchain network. So there are different projects under Hyperledger. There are two categories of projects under Hyperledger. The first is blockchain projects, and second category is relevant tools or modules that support this blockchain. So there are various projects are developed under this Hyperledger fabric, and second category is relevant tools or modules that support these blockchains, and these relevant tools and modules we can choose as per our requirement. These are the plug and play type of modules. If we require the module, then we can plug that module into our blockchain. If you don't require that module, then we will not use it. So currently there are 5 blockchain frameworks under the Hyperledger umbrella: Fabric, Sawtooth Lake, Iroha, Burrow, and Indy. And under modules, there are the Hyperledger Cello, Hyperledger Composer, Hyperledger Explorer, and Hyperledger Quilt. So there are the frameworks. These frameworks can use to design and develop blockchains for industries, and there are modules, and we can select the modules as per our requirement. So you can see, students, the architecture of this Hyperledger. This Hyperledger is we can see the Hyperledger reference architecture. The reference architecture consists of various components that form a business blockchain. So you can see the components of this Hyperledger reference architecture: identity, policy, blockchain, transactions, and smart contracts. So under the identity component provides the identity services, ledger identity and resource and identities, and policy services provide the configuration, access control, and privacy. Then blockchain services provides consensus manager. We know that for forming a blockchain we need the peer-to-peer network, then consensus mechanism, then we need the distributed ledger to store the blocks in the blockchain, and ledger storage. Ledger storage is to store the ledger. So these are the blockchain services, 4 services: consensus manager, distributed ledger, peer-to-peer network, and ledger storage. And last component of this Hyperledger reference architecture is smart contracts. Smart contract services contains secure container, registry, and life cycle. So these are the 5 components of this reference architecture: identity, policy, blockchain, transactions, and smart contracts. So we will see these components in detail one by one. So in previous session, you can see from the left, starting from the left, we see that we have 5 top level components which provides various services: identity services, policy services, blockchain services, transaction services, and smart contract services. So first is identity. First component of this Hyperledger reference architecture is identity. This identity provides authorization, identification, and authentication services under membership services. So this identity is for identifying the members, to authorize the members, and it provides authentication services under the membership services. So there is a membership service provider which provides the membership to the blockchain. So it will check the identity of the member before adding the member to the blockchain. So the next component is the policy component, which provides policy services. Then next component after the policy services is, after this ledger and transactions come, which consist of distributed ledger, ordering services. We need to order the transactions in the sequence, and the network protocols, endorsement and validation services, and this ledger is updated only via the consensus mechanism among the partitions of the blockchain. So we know the basic principles of the blockchain. Blockchain is updated via the consensus among the participants. And finally, we have the smart contracts layer, which provides chain code services. So in blockchain, there is a concept of chain code services. This chain code services is nothing but the this is responsible for executing the smart contracts to enforce the business conditions. So chain code services is nothing but the smart contract service in Hyperledger, and it makes use of secure container technology to host the smart contract. So we will see in details what are the components of this blockchain, what is chain code, what is channel, what is membership service provided, then what is certificate authority, and what is peer. Peer means nodes in the Hyperledger in coming sessions. So Hyperledger elements, there are different layers in this Hyperledger elements. If we try to see this Hyperledger in layered form, then there is a consensus layer. These services are responsible for facilitating the agreement process between the participants on the blockchain. So we know that what is the consensus mechanism. Consensus mechanism is the agreement process between the participants before adding any block in the blockchain. There are transactions need to be agreed by all the participants. Block is created and block is added in the blockchain. Then after that, there is a smart contract layer. This smart contract layer is nothing but the chain code services. These services are responsible for implementing the business logic, business conditions, whatever the conditions. This layer is responsible for enforcing the business conditions as per the requirements of the users, and transactions are processed based on the logic defined in the smart contracts that reside on the blockchain. So the transactions are processed as per the conditions defined in the business logic. Whatever the conditions are there, that conditions are enforced, and if that conditions met, then that transaction is allowed to process. Then communication layer, this layer is responsible for message transmission and exchange between the nodes on the blockchain network. Then last layer of this Hyperledger elements Hyperledger is security and crypto layer. Crypto layer, security and crypto layer. These services are responsible for providing a capability to allow various cryptographic algorithms or modules to provide privacy, confidentiality and non-repudiation services. So as this Hyperledger provides a modular architecture, and we can select the modules as per our requirement. These modules are plug and play. So security mechanism also, we can decide whether we require advanced security mechanism or whether we require a basic security mechanism for privacy, confidentiality and non-repudiation services. So we can select the modules as per our requirements in Hyperledger Fabric. So we will see this in detail in coming sessions. Then Hyperledger elements consist of data services. This layer provides an ability to use different data stores for storing the state of the ledger. So data services provides a ability to store the data, to store the blockchain, whatever the current state of the ledger, that state will be stored. And this data services means that the data stores are also pluggable, and allows the usage of any database backend. So we know that this Hyperledger provides a plug and play feature, modular structure. All the components are pluggable, and it allows uses of any kind of database backend to store the data. And then policy services, this set of services provide the ability to manage different policies required for the blockchain network. So this policy services provides a different ability to manage the different policies for the blockchain, and this includes uh, endorsement policy and consensus policy. Then APIs and SDKs, this layer allows the clients and applications to interact with the blockchain. We can interact with the blockchain with the APIs and interface, and SDK is used to provide mechanism to deploy and execute the chain code. Chain code provides a smart contract service, then query blocks and monitor events on the blockchain. So these are the different layers of the hyper ledger structure. Then we have to study the requirements or design goals of the Hyperledger Fabric. So students, you try to understand these design goals or requirements of the Hyperledger Fabric. So from these requirements, we will come to know what are the benefits of the Hyperledger Fabric, what are the features, and also this Hyperledger Fabric is, we will come to know how the Hyperledger Fabric is beneficial to the business or industries. That we will also come to know. These requirements are formed. These requirements are formed as per the requirement of the industries. So first requirement of the Hyperledger Fabric is modular approach. The main requirement of the Hyperledger is a modular structure. It is expected that as a cross-industry fabric, it will be used in many business scenarios. Cross-industry means there is not only one type of industry, but there are different types of industries that can use this Hyperledger framework to build blockchain for their businesses. And it is expected that as a cross-industry fabric, it will be used in many business scenarios. As such, functions related to storage, policy, chain code, access control, consensus, and many other blockchain services should be modular and pluggable. So all the services of the blockchain, storage, policy, chain code, smart contract, access control, security, all these services should be modular services and pluggable. Modular means that services should be divided in different modules, and we should be able to choose the module, to select the module as per our requirement. We should be able to plug in the module, and to plug in means to add the module or either to remove the module from the blockchain. So such type of modular structure this Hyperledger should have. The specification suggests that the module should be plug and play, and users should be able to easily remove and add a different module that meets the requirements of the business. So you try to understand this feature. This feature is very important. Modules should be plug and play. Users should be able to easily remove the modules. If the module is not needed, then users can remove the modules or either add a different module that meets the requirement of the business. If a business requires some modules, then that business can add the module to the blockchain. So this is the modular feature this Hyperledger provides. Then privacy and confidentiality. As a traditional blockchains are permissionless blockchains, the permission model like Hyperledger. We know the Hyperledger is a permission blockchain. It is a private blockchain, and Hyperledger Fabric, it is in the Hyperledger Fabric, it is utmost importance that transactions on the network are visible to only those who are allowed to view it. So you can read this sentence again. It is utmost importance that the transactions on the network are visible to only those who are allowed to view it. So as this model Hyperledger Fabric is a permission blockchain, private blockchain, so transactions should be visible to only those who are allowed to view that transactions, and it is expected that users will be able to choose appropriate modules according to their business requirements. So as in previous slide also we have shared that I have said users will be able to choose the appropriate modules as per their business requirements. And if a business blockchain performs very basic operations, and then perhaps there is no need of need to have advanced cryptographic support for confidentiality and privacy. If business logic performs very basic operation, then there is no need of advanced cryptographic support and confidential and privacy services. If user need to run a cross-industry applications, if user need to run a cross-industry blockchain, then confidentiality and privacy can be of paramount importance. If different industries are participating in the blockchain, then confidentiality and privacy becomes very important. And in this case, users should be able to plug an advanced cryptographic and access control mechanism. So it requires more security, advanced security mechanism if the blockchain is used for cross-industry blockchain. So we can select the security mechanism, whether we require an advanced security mechanism or whether we require a basic security, or you can say basic cryptographic support, so that we can choose, we can select as per our requirement. As this Hyperledger is a modular, has the modular structure, and we can it has plug and play feature. We can remove the module from the blockchain, or either we can add the module as per our requirement in the Hyperledger Fabric. So scalability, this is another major requirement, which once met will allow reasonable transaction throughput and which will be sufficient for all business requirements and also a large number of users. So the system should be scalable. We should be able to add the modules as per our requirement. We should be able to remove the modules. We should be add the a small number of users or either large number of users as per our requirement. So this is another feature of this Hyperledger. Then deterministic transactions. Deterministic means if we execute the transactions at different time, they should produce the same type of result. If we execute the transactions on different machines, then the result should be same on every machine. So this is the meaning of this deterministic. So this is the deterministic transaction is a core requirement in any blockchain, because if transactions do not produce the same result every time, they are executed regardless of who and where the transaction is executed, then achieving consensus mechanism is impossible. If the different machines, different nodes are providing different results, then achieving the consensus, achieving the agreement between the participants become difficult. So the transaction should be executed in same fashion, in same way on different machines, and should produce the same results. So this is the requirement of this Hyperledger Fabric. So therefore deterministic transactions become a key requirement in any blockchain network. And then identity, in order to provide privacy and confidentiality services, a flexible PKI model that can be used to handle the access control and functionality is also required. So there is a membership service providers which provides the membership service. The members are identified, members are authenticated before adding to the blockchain. So in certain scenario, it might be required for a user to hide their identity, and as such the Hyperledger is expected to provide such kind of functionality. So this is one of the requirement of this Hyperledger Fabric. Then auditability, we should be able to audit the whatever happened in the Hyperledger, whatever transactions are happen, identities of the users, everything should be auditable, and the log information should be maintained, so that we can see the previous, or we can see the history information. So auditability is another requirement of Hyperledger Fabric. It is expected that an immutable audit trail of all identities, related operations and any changes is kept. Whatever the changes we make in the blockchain, that information should be maintained, and from that history we can check the auditability of this Hyperledger Fabric. We can check what happened in the previous what will be the state of the previous state of the system, who are the participant, and now what is the current state, that we can see from the audit trail of this Hyperledger Fabric. Then interoperability. Currently there are many blockchain platforms available, but they cannot communicate with each other, and this can be a limiting factor in the growth of the blockchain based global business ecosystem. So there are different types of blockchain, and these blockchains are not cannot communicate with each other, but this will limit the growth of the blockchain. So these blockchains should be able to communicate with each other. So this is one of the requirement of this Hyperledger Fabric. So many blockchains will operate in the business world for specific needs, but it is important that they are able to communicate with each other. So this is one of the important feature. Different business are operating in the different blockchains are operating in the business world, and this blockchain should be able to communicate with each other. There should be a common set of standards that all blockchains can follow in order to allow the communication. If all the blockchains use some common set of standards, then these blockchains can communicate with each other. So it can allow communication between the different ledgers if these blockchains follow some set of standards. So it is expected that a protocol will be developed that will allow the exchange of information between many fabrics. Portability. The code should be portable. We should be able to port our code on any kind of platform, any kind of environment, any kind of node. So the portability requirement is concerned with the ability to run across multiple platforms and environments without the need to change anything at code level. So without changing the code, we should be able to load the code on different across the different multiple platforms and environments without the need to change anything at code level. So Hyperledger Fabric is expected to be portable not only at infrastructure level but also at the code level, libraries and API levels, so that it can support uniform development across various implementations of the Hyperledger. Rich data queries. Hyperledger should allow rich queries to be run on the network. So this can be used to query the current state of the ledger using traditional query languages, and which will allow for wider adoption and ease of the use. So the meaning of this, that we should be able to query. Query means what information we would like to get from the blockchain, what is the current state of the system, and other different types of information that we can get by firing the querying. And such type of queries, rich queries, should be supported using the traditional query languages in Hyperledger, and which will allow for wider adoption and ease of the use. So these are the different design goals of the blockchain: portability, modular structure, then selection of different types of security mechanisms, interoperability, rich data queries. So from that, students, you might have come to know the what will be the features of the blockchain, and how Hyperledger blockchain should be, that we come to know from design goals. So students, in this session we have studied the basic things of Hyperledger. We have studied what is Hyperledger. Hyperledger provides a modular and plug and play architecture. It is a framework, and by using the framework, the business industries can develop their design and develop their blockchains and the modules. It has modular structure, so we can select the modules as per our requirement. So we have studied the Hyperledger architecture, and also we have studied the Hyperledger design goals. So in this session we will stop here. Thanks for watching session. Goodbye.